Have you ever sketched a hole in your paper? Because I sure have. So someone asked me a while ago, please make a video on how you sketch. I guess that wasn't really a question, was it? Can you please make a video on how you sketch? I couldn't find the comment or whatever, wherever the request was made, but I shall comply. Before I start, I want to make it clear that none of the things I do are mandatory to be as good as me. You have to find your own tools so you can be comfortable with those. But showing you the stuff I use might still be helpful. So let's start off with the materials. I have two different things of paper. I have a super cheap sketch block for scribbles and stuff, and then I have a nicer block for the illustration sketches. None of them have any brand anyways, so it doesn't really matter. As for the actual sketching materials, I pretty much only use 4 different things. 2 pencils and 2 erasers. A big pencil in 2mm, a Rotring Tiki pencil in 0.5mm, a kneadable eraser by Brunnen. I only use half of it though because the whole one would be a pain to get into the case again, so the other one is just sitting in my desk for the next time. When this one's really gross and old and I don't want to use it anymore, then I can just exchange that. Good, thanks, okay, bye. And a Tombow Mono Zero mechanical eraser. Mechanical eraser? Mechanical eraser. I don't know if that's what it's called, but it's called that now. I don't know. Now let's get into how I use those things. I like to use my paper in landscape if I use a full I like to use my paper in landscape if I use a full A4 sheet and A5 for portrait. I find that A4 in portrait is a little too big and leaves too much room for mistakes, and the chances of messing up the proportions is a lot higher when you have the paper lay flat on the table. If I make an illustration, I use my thick paper sketch block and I just lightly fold the page in half to indicate where the drawing needs to be or needs to end. I usually do the sketch in lower light. It makes me concentrate more on what I'm doing instead of what's happening around me for some reason. Yeah. I'm weird. My PC screen illuminates the white page and everything else is just lit by my room light. Most of the time I start my sketch a little too low on the page. I used to start way too high and would always have the top of the heads cut off. So I started a little lower. Since I trace my sketches, it doesn't really matter though. Either I use reference for the drawing or I just have the image in my head. If the image comes from my head, I do still try to find reference for parts I'm unsure of. I start off by drawing a head shape with my 2mm pencil. I'm using F lead in that one because it's a lot more grayish and keeps this part very light. I try to keep everything in motion while also moving pretty fast so that I don't lose my vision of what I'm doing. Usually I start by drawing the head, but if I were to draw a character into a scenery where they have to sit or stand somewhere particular, I would start by the thing that they are touching, meaning if they sit, I start with the butt. I make all the shapes very loose and rough just to indicate where the shape is without losing myself in detail. I feel like if you start at some point and work yourself over slowly, you're more likely to lose the right proportions and it gets harder to fix things. I try to make every single stroke solid, no chicken steps. One stroke and done is what I try to do, which by the way, I'm not very good at yet, so whatever. After making circles and stuff, for the head, I indicate where the eyes go and the nose and the ears and the mouth and the eyebrows. I'm not gonna go into too much detail on how I do the guidelines because that's not what this is about and it would take way too long. So usually I would switch pencils and move on to my darker, smaller one to sketch in all the actual features. However, I've recently discovered that drawing these things lightly with a bigger pencil and going into more detail with it just makes everything a lot easier and better. Instead of drawing and erasing the dark lines a million times, I basically just trace the lines I want way better. For this step, I use my 0.5mm lead in 2B because it's softer and darker than HB. I try to make a confident, slow but steady strokes all the way through from beginning to end. It keeps everything cleaner and helps with denting the paper less and keeping holes away, even if I use very thin paper. This is the part that usually takes the longest. I sometimes work on refining this sketch for multiple days, looking at it over and over and over just to make sure it's fine the way it is and ready to ink. Drawing a background is a whole other story. Sometimes I make it first and sometimes I add it on later. If I need it to be in a perspective, I either draw it first first or draw it on a separate piece of paper or trace it in ink onto my watercolor paper, and that's pretty much it. So I will attempt Inktober this month, and I might fail because last year I basically had more time than I have now, and I did fail, but I'll still try my best, so we're just gonna have to see how it goes. Well, thank you for watching, and to conclude this, it's time for a weekly fortune cookie. You will be an inspiration to others. And with that, I wish you a nice weekend. Beware of the sketch holes, and see you next week. Bye!